He had the last water in the desert and did this. Kale the camel's story of kindness. In the endless ocean of sand, the sun wasn't a friend. It was a tyrant. Days ago, a sandstorm had scoured the world clean, leaving it bone dry and gasping. The wind itself felt thirsty. The dunes, once flowing and soft, were now cracked and sharp, their peaks like shattered teeth against a bruised sky. In this broken world, there was still life, but just barely. And there was water, but only a little. It belonged to Kale, a camel whose silhouette was a lonely punctuation mark in the vast, empty horizon. Kale was old, but he still carried hope, and in a small, weathered leather canteen, he carried the last of the oasis, the last drinkable water in this part of the world. It wasn't much, a few mouthfuls, a day's survival, maybe two. As he looked out over the shimmering heat, he saw a flicker of movement, and his journey, the one that would change everything, began. Kale's own throat felt like a landscape of dust, but he pushed forward. It wasn't long before he found the source of the movement. Huddled in the sliver of shade from a skeletal rock were a family of fennec foxes. Their huge ears, usually sharp and alert, drooped with exhaustion. A mother and two tiny kids panted in shallow, desperate breaths. The mother looked up, her dark eyes filled not with fear, but with a deep, soul-crushing weariness that Kale understood in his very bones. She made no sound. There was no moisture left for begging. Kale stopped. Every survival instinct screamed at him. Keep walking. This isn't your problem. Your water is your life. He nudged the canteen with his nose. It felt impossibly light. He imagined the cool, clear water on his own tongue. It was his. But then he looked at the kids. They were no bigger than his hoof, their tiny chests barely moving. They were children of the desert, just like him. What was survival if it meant walking past the death of innocence? The struggle inside him was a silent, ferocious storm. He remembered his mother's lesson. The desert provides for those who provide for others. With a slow, deliberate movement that felt like it cost him a year of his life, Kale nudged the canteen off his back. He carefully uncorked it and tipped a painfully small trickle into a hollow in the rock. It was just a whisper of moisture. The mother fox crept forward, lapped at the tiny pool, and then nudged her kids toward it. She looked at Kale, and in her gaze, he felt a silent, sacred thank you that was worth more than the water he'd given. He secured his now lighter canteen and walked on. His throat burned, but his heart felt strangely lighter. The sun climbed higher, a white-hot coin in a bleached sky. Kale's thirst was now a living thing, a creature with claws scraping the inside of his throat. The water he'd given away felt like a phantom limb. That's when he saw him, an ancient desert tortoise, a creature that looked more like the landscape than an animal, sat motionless. His shell was a map of 100 seasons. Well now, he rasped, his voice the sound of stones grinding together. A traveler. I thought the storm had claimed everyone. There's little left to claim, Kale replied, his own voice hoarse. I have seen droughts that turn sand to glass and storms that move mountains, the tortoise said, but I have never seen a silence like this. The desert is holding its breath. The tortoise looked at the canteen. You carry life, young one. Guard it well. It is all that is left. This was it. The voice of wisdom itself was giving Kale permission, telling him to be selfish. It was the logical thing to do. And yet, looking at the creature who had crawled these sands for a lifetime, Kale felt a sense of duty. He sighed, a sound that cracked in the dry air. Again, he unstrapped the canteen. His movements were slower now. Weighted by fatigue, he poured another measure of his life into a crack in the parched earth. It was more than he had given the foxes. It felt reckless, insane. The tortoise slowly lowered his head and drank a long, slow sip of borrowed time. You are a foolish camel, the tortoise said, his voice a fraction stronger. Or you are a kinder one than this desert deserves. Kale nodded and continued his journey, the world swimming before his eyes. He had only a few drops left. The world devolved into a blur of heat and light. Kale's legs trembled, and the thirst was no longer just a pain. It was his entire reality. The canteen was nearly empty. The last drop sloshing with a hollow, mocking sound. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that he would not survive another hour without drinking. This was it. The next drink had to be his. Just then, his legs gave way, and he fell as his vision cleared. He saw what he had nearly tripped over, a young gazelle, lying on its side, its large, innocent eyes glazed with the film of imminent death. It was alone. Its mother likely lost to the storm. It let out a tiny, almost inaudible bleat, the sound of a life completely giving up. Camel stared. This felt like a final, cruel joke from the universe. Here was the most helpless creature imaginable. And here was Camel, with the last drops of water in the world. This was his life in that canteen. He closed his eyes, picturing the cool water on his own tongue, the relief, the sweet rush of life renewed. He could drink it, lie here, and maybe regain enough strength to survive. It was the sane choice. But then he opened his eyes and looked at the gazelle. He saw the flicker of a heartbeat in its slender neck. He saw a life that had not yet been lived. What was the point of his survival if it was bought at the cost of his own heart? His body screamed in protest, but his spirit, a quiet and steady thing he hadn't known was so strong, had already decided. With a final, shuddering sigh, he used the last of his strength to fumble with the canteen. He held it over the gazelle's parted lips. He tilted it, and he poured out everything. The last few drops of water in the desert. His last chance. As the final drop fell, Camel collapsed onto the sand, his canteen empty, his body spent. He closed his eyes, ready for the end. But the end didn't come. Instead, something impossible happened. Where the last drop of water had fallen, a dark patch appeared. It didn't evaporate. It grew. From that single point of kindness, a trickle of clear, pure water bubbled up from the sand. A deep, impossible green pushed through the cracked earth. Camel forced his heavy eyes open. It wasn't a mirage. It was real. The trickle became a stream, and the stream became a pool. The gazelle staggered to its feet and drank deeply from the miraculous spring. Everywhere the water touched, the desert bloomed. The fennec fox family appeared. The ancient tortoise ambled over. The gazelle's mother came running, one by one. The creatures of the desert arrived. They gathered around the new oasis, an awestruck community. They all looked at Camel, who now stood tall, his thirst quenched. He had proven an ancient law, that true abundance isn't found in what you keep, but in what you give away. They say that in the heart of the great desert, there is an oasis that never runs dry, and the creatures tell a story of a kind camel who, holding the last drops of life, chose not to save himself, but to save another. If you believe one act of kindness can change the world, subscribe for more stories that prove it. Share this with someone who needs a reminder of the power we all hold to make a difference. What is the kindest thing you've ever witnessed? Let us know in the comments below.